YouTube, what's going on? Coach Nate here, and welcome to the Dating Insights Lab. So today I want to talk about something that a lot of people struggle with in their dating lives. They've been in and out of them. Sometimes they have a tough time avoiding them, and that is toxic relationships. So today I want to define them, and I want to show you how to avoid them in a few different ways from a few different aspects. So let's dive in. So with any problem, the first thing we want to do is really define it and make sure that because it's well defined, you're able to take that information and just really look out for it, really vet it. So there might be more examples or definitions of this out in the world, but I'm going to throw a few up. So the first one is if you get into a relationship with a user, right? Maybe an abuser, somebody that's ultra jealous, someone that's super disrespectful, and really, probably the way that I would put it is the opposite of empowering. So what does that mean? Well, really, if you get into a relationship with somebody that they're just holding you back, they're dragging you down, they give you crap, every step of the way. Maybe they're trying to take advantage of you from a financial standpoint, an emotional standpoint, a sexual standpoint. And it's almost, if you sit back and think about it objectively, a lot of time in these relationships, you are happier and better off when you were single by far than when you're in this situation. And I'll even put my hand up. When I was younger, I was probably the more toxic person in some of the relationships that I was in. Not anymore, thankfully. But I would almost, again, kind of the overarching statement is that if you're in a relationship that's the opposite of empowering, it could very well be toxic. And no matter what stage. So, using myself as an example, I've been married for 6 years, okay? And we still, even after all these years, we still empower each other to be better people, to excel at our respective careers, to get along better, I try to even ask sometimes, is there anything more that I can do, that I can contribute? Right now, my wife is pregnant, so there's certain activities around the house that she either doesn't have energy for or she can't do, So recently I had to take over cat litter responsibilities, right? Because she literally cannot do that. I've actually wound up cooking more meals because she doesn't have the energy when she gets out of work, stuff like that. So in that way, I'm being the opposite of toxic. I don't just sit back and say, well, you should be able to do the same stuff. I actually am like, well, I got to take on and do more around the house because she doesn't have the energy to. So that's an example in practice of how not to be toxic. And these up here are signals that if you're in a relationship or maybe you've had relationships before, that they were toxic at least at times. So the next aspect I really wanted to cover on this subject is probable cause or causes of the toxic relationship. So we kind of know what it is, but in my mind, if I'm going to figure out a problem, the next thing I want to ask is, well, what caused the problem in the first place? So if we go up here, causes of toxic relationships, I'm going to say overarchingly, the biggest one is selfishness. And what do we mean by that? Well, it really is the overarching cause, the root of it, if you will. So let's say we have a couple that they have a lot of money fights and a lot of problems. This is very common, even with married couples. And let's say the guy is being a douche and he wants to go out and buy some big expensive thing. And even when he talks about it with his wife, she says, no, you shouldn't buy this because we have other needs in the household. But maybe because he's the breadwinner, he says, screw that, he just goes out and gets it anyway. Well, we can say on the surface that the real reason, this is a money fight that they're having or whatever, and they didn't negotiate through that. But I would say the real reason behind that is selfishness. Even though he's the breadwinner, and I totally get that he can go out and buy that thing, nobody can really stop him. But the big aspect of that is he's being so selfish that he's putting his own desire above the collective good of the household and the collective good of the relationship and their financial situation, right? So what I'm trying to display to you is, yes, on the surface, there are things. It could be a money fight, it could be a jealousy fight, but what it kind of gets back to at its heart is a selfishness issue. Where, if we flip this on its head a little bit, where you can kind of begin to see is that the better way to go about it is to find somebody in your dating life, like if you're single and you're looking for better dating prospects, what you want to find is somebody with the mindset of, if we get into the relationship together, if we go down the road of sharing a life together and all this stuff, having kids, getting a house, stuff like that, that we're both putting at least a lot of our selfishness aside and going toward the collective good of the relationship. So circling back a little bit, when it comes to causes, we can say what happened is, if you've had a history of toxic relationships, you're letting people into your life, you're letting women into your life that are putting their selfish desires and inadequacies and insecurities, they're putting that selfishness above the needs of the relationship, above the needs of you, above the need of discussing things in a good, healthy manner so that you can compromise powerfully. So now I'm hoping you're starting to see where not only you kind of went wrong in the past and why you've had these toxic relationships, but along with that, how you can habit-wise get into the mindset of finding one that isn't. So now we're going to cover how to prevent getting into one of these relationships in the future. And a big part of, in my dating practice, what I go over with clients is front-end vetting for red flags. What does that mean exactly? Well, in our initial dating stages, in the first maybe 2 weeks to 2 months of dating somebody new, it's kind of an application process, if you will. So, a bigger employer, they're going to take most people through an application process, a couple different interviews, stuff like that, because they're trying to weed out somebody that would potentially be toxic for their company, right? Now, I don't agree with everything that corporate America does, but it's not a bad practice, because the worst thing you can kind of do is be stuck with a bad employee. And maybe it's a little bit of a crude analogy or example, but it does have some merit. And we want to do that, we want to do the same thing with our prospective dating partners. So what I teach clients is basically in the initial stages of the new dating relationship, if hate to say it, but if somebody doesn't qualify, if they're not a good prospect, then it's time to politely disconnect and move on to the next one. Because it's better to be alone and single than with somebody toxic, right? So, a few things here. Front end red flags. First one is conscientiousness. Here's what I mean. You start going out with somebody, the conversation's been going good, maybe you initially met on a dating app, and you've translated that into hanging out a couple times a week. And then what they do is they start to maybe ditch you. Maybe they show up super late without a good excuse. So hear me out. If you have like a third date and they everything in the first 2 dates went well and they text you, they're like, hey, my grandma passed away this morning. I can't come to our scheduled date tonight. Hey, that's fine. But let's say we get a month down the road, 2 months down the road, and this person is doing that all the time. I actually, believe it or not, in my earlier dating days, I had a girl that when we would hang out, she was extremely nice. She seemed really into me. Her family liked me. Even went to church together once or twice. But what would happen is she really, really valued her like family time to a really high degree, and she would literally ditch me. She would ditch on me when we had a scheduled time to hang out to go hang out with her sister. And once I was there, let's say we were supposed to go out for coffee. Well, I'm at the coffee shop. I'm waiting for 20 minutes. I'm like, hey, where the hell are you? She'd finally reply, be like, oh, I'm hanging out with my sister. I'm like, what happened? So after this happened about the second time, even though she was really cool once we did get together, on the second time, I politely disconnected. And she was surprised. She was like, surprised that maybe I would have the emotional strength to do this. And it doesn't matter how pretty you are. It doesn't matter what kind of prize this person thought she was. I wasn't going to put up with being treated that way. And that's a lesson you should take to the bank. So I'm not going to be pulled into a relationship of toxicity because, number one, you can't be conscientious with me. My time is valuable too. So again, if somebody in the front end of the relationship is not being conscientious with you, really bad sign. And if you continue to pursue that relationship, they don't value your time, they don't value your needs and emotions, so they're ultimately not going to value you, which leads them back to they're going to be really selfish, right, with things. And as that relationship evolves, it's going to become, in all likelihood, more and more toxic. Next thing is users and abusers. So this is probably more in a case of, let's say you've only been going out maybe a week or two, and out of the blue you get that message like, oh, hey, can you give me $50 so that I can buy some groceries? Hey, can you give me a ride somewhere? I really need to ride to work. When they don't have a car or don't have something set up, something like that. And this is one where I'm actually going to want you to think outside yourself a little bit and really trust your feelings. So in this initial stage of the relationship, they're already asking you for like some kind of big favor, some kind of thing. And when you think about doing it, you get actually like a cringe feeling inside of you, especially if they're asking you for money. Big red flag. Because really the question is, let's say you've only been going out for a week. Well, if they didn't have you in their life like they didn't a week ago, what would they have done? How would they have gotten that $50 that they need? How would they have gotten that ride? And now that you're there, they all of a sudden need this from you? Doesn't sound right. It's not logical. And that's why your brain is firing with some chemical reaction that's kind of saying, hey, this is your subconscious is literally telling you it's a bad idea to give this person money. It's a bad idea to give them a ride. And really, being a client of mine or watching content of myself and other dating coaches out there, we want to date from an area of power and confidence and going out. Our whole dating mission should be to find the love of our life, right? Not to be used or something like that. So I would say just trust your feelings on that. And the ideal dating prospects already have their life pretty much figured out other than having you in it. They have their own place, their own car. And maybe they live in their parents' basement because it's cheap, but they have all the other things. They have a career and a car and stuff. There's a big difference between that and somebody that's just out to use you. So again, trust your feelings. And if somebody, especially in those first initial days, if they're already starting to try and use you for something, huge red flag, let's vet that. So I gotta say, my next piece of front-end vetting for red flags is this right here. Physical contact. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you get a dating prospect that is trying to be hypersexual out of the gate, or maybe in the first couple weeks, like really pushing you into the bedroom uncomfortably, huge red flag. That type of person is probably there just to fill a physical need and not get a real relationship out of you. Maybe this sounds like common sense to some, but others get taken advantage of it all the time. I recently know of somebody that their last prospects have been friends with benefits, and really all those friends with benefits were doing was using this nice person. And in the end, they disconnected, and that's good. But really, if you're going to give yourself up, even as a guy, if you're going to give yourself up physically to somebody, it should be of mutual fun, benefit, understanding. Like the feeling should be mutual, and it definitely shouldn't be one person using the other. So yes, it works a little hand in hand with the using piece, but if you just, again, I want you to trust your feeling. If you get a cringe feeling that somebody is just using you for something purely physical, and they don't value your feelings and your time and stuff like that, and obviously it goes back to another piece, they're not empowering the relationship to be better. They're just there for that one physical thing. Well, if you keep going down the road of that relationship, then guess what? It's going to turn toxic because it already is. So probably my last point of vetting relationships on the front end, vetting, using red flags to vet them, if you will, is I'm going to call it alignment on the big stuff. So what does that mean? Well, I've said it in other videos, but most couples, short-term, long-term, they argue, they break up, they get divorced, whatever, over the big stuff in life. So I'll go back to a married couple, and most married couples have money fights. Well, I'm going to say, in their beginning stages of their relationship, did they talk through what their plans with money were and how they act with it and stuff like that? So the reason I bring it up is when you're in your initial dating stages, the first 2 weeks to 2 months of dating, it's a great time to talk about your future plans and your life goals. And maybe not on the first date by any means, but, after a few weeks, after things start to be more serious, you can say, hey, what are your thoughts on handling money? Because this is how I do it. Like me personally, I like to keep my debt relatively low. I don't like owing anybody money. And if I do take out debt, it's for very small interest, and I try to pay it off early. Where me being that type of person, I'm a Dave Ramsey listener. If I were to start dating somebody that just throws money around everywhere, maybe they're the person that they go out and buy a $40,000 car when they only make $35,000 a year, those numbers don't add up very well to you having a comfortable lifestyle, right? Or at least one where if an emergency happens, you have the means to pay for it. So what happens, or actually, I'll even use another example. Let's go to religion. Let's say I have a very conservative Christian view, and I try to go to church, at least every Sunday morning and whatever. And I try going out with somebody that they value none of that. They trust, kind of what the world has going on in terms of hypersexuality and whatever. And I'm not here to judge either person, okay? But what I will say is if those two people try engaging in a long-term serious relationship and they have kids together, there's probably going to be a lot of friction because one person or the other is trying to drive, you know what I mean? There's friction there. And because they can never agree on that religious view, the relationship becomes toxic, right? People, and these are the big reasons. It's money, it's religion, and it's child rearing. Same thing. Somebody wants to be maybe very disciplined with children, and the other person, thinks that the children should be coddled and helicoptered. Again, those two people are going to have a lot of friction through the relationship, and the relationship overall becomes toxic. Both people are toxic to each other. And that's what we're trying to avoid by watching a video like this. So going back, almost to summarize, alignment on the big stuff, child rearing, religion, politics, children. If you're not aligned very well or can't compromise in those areas, your relationship eventually will become toxic, and we want to avoid it. So I want to cover here the biggest way that you can prevent all of that junk, all of that gobbledygook. And what that is your own self-esteem. I've said it that your dating life is a direct reflection of your self-esteem, of your self-confidence. So the biggest way that you can vet or prevent a toxic relationship is when you start to go through your dating process, right? You go on your second date, then your fourth date, and then things become more serious. If the relationship is starting to go in a toxic direction, and you gotta look at yourself inward a little bit and trust those feelings. But if you're starting to get that cringe feeling that I talk about a lot, nobody else out there is defining this, by the way, but you get this cringe feeling like, this person doesn't empower me. They're dragging me down. They're trying to use me for something, right? You need to have enough self-esteem to go be single again. Go be by yourself again. Because the most powerful place you can date from is when you're confident in yourself and you're just okay being single, then somebody attracts to you that, you're going to empower each other's lives. That's where the magic happens. But if you start to go down the road of a relationship that is not that way, having powerful and a lot of self-esteem, having the confidence to, hey babe, we've been going out for a month and you seem pretty cool, but it's not working out for me. I think we should just be friends. I think we should, I don't have a big problem with you, but I don't see us making it. I don't see us getting married. You need to be able to say something like that and disconnect from that person romantically. And even a big reason to think about too is the sooner you disconnect with the wrong person, that leaves you back open so that you can attract the right person, right? So that's what I'd say. Biggest thing, self-esteem, having the confidence to be alone, be single again. And even if you've been going out with this person for 8 months, 2 years, if it's grown toxic and you got to look in yourself a little bit, in your heart of hearts, you don't want to marry this person. You don't want to buy a house with them. You don't want them to be the mother of your child or the father of your child or whatever. When you know that and you realize you got to make the decision to disconnect, to break up, and sometimes it's tough. Sometimes you got to, maybe you're even living together, and you got to go and find your own apartment again and move all your stuff out. Yes, it's hard, but once you get through that hard stage and then you find yourself again and you can go out and date the person that you want, it is so awesome once you're there. And I say this all from experience. I've done all these things that I'm telling you. I'm not some guy that, I'm not teaching this out of my mom's basement. So just, again, biggest thing though, have that self-esteem to leave that bad relationship and go find the awesome one. So, Dating Tribe, thank you so much for watching this latest installment of the Dating Insights Lab. Again, I'm Coach Nate. Please take a moment to like the video, subscribe to my channel. It really helps. And I try to come out with new content every week to just legitimately help you, good people, get into the long-term happy relationships that you want, and a relationship like I have, which I would describe my marriage as all those good things, empowering and stuff like that. So you can find me at pattersoncoachingwny.com. That is my website that has all my contact and links to the social and everything, but right down to a phone number. You can literally call me if you want. And very easy way to get a hold of me is my email, which is pattersoncoachingwny@gmail.com. And what I do with people is I do one-on-one coaching with them to figure out what's holding them back in their dating life, help them get better at it and over it, and then begin to date powerfully. And what's really awesome is typically after 1 or 2 sessions with meeting with somebody, they already start to have way better results than they were before they talked to me. And I gotta say, when I was single, long before I was married, I was a dating machine out in the world. Whether you believe me or not, I had lots of relationships, short-term, long-term, live-in, all that stuff. Good, bad, and different, shapes, sizes, you name it. I've probably been there, and I went from being that way when I was in high school. I was super immature, super uncalibrated, no self-esteem at all, to being able to date powerfully and finding an awesome wife. And I don't say any of that to brag, but it's all tools I have in the toolbox to be able to help you get to your dating goals. So if you're serious about finding long-term love, the awesomeness that can be the finish line of dating, getting an awesome marriage, I'm your guy to help you get there. Another thing to note too, just in my credential list, I'm a very experienced multi-level corporate sales manager as well. So I know I said it earlier in the video, but I'm not just some guy in his basement thinking about things. Like, I actually have real world experience leading people, selling big deals, having influence over multi-million-dollar markets for large companies. So, you're not talking to somebody that just, I woke up and decided to help people with dating. Like, no, I actually still have a day job, grinding it out every day, doing that leadership stuff as well. So again, I don't say this to brag. I don't think I'm the next, the biggest thing since sliced bread, but I have 100% confidence in my ability to, if you're weak at the dating game, if you've been down the road of toxic relationships and you want to be better, we're gonna get you better as long as you allow yourself to work with me. So again, website's pattersoncoachingwny.com. My email is pattersoncoachingwny@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you, hear your story. Let's fix your dating life. Let's take it to the next level. Let's find the love that you really want. That's why I'm here. It pulls me out of bed. I'm so passionate about it. I want to dig in and help you. And we'll get it to the next level if you reach out, which is all you got to do. So again, like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.